In 1945, the patriarchs of the United States of America, the family Rockefeller, most importantly, but their think tanks like the Council on Foreign Relations and so forth, created out of the rubble of the Second World War a global empire. They refused to call it an empire. They said, we will not make the mistake that the British made. We won't call ours an empire. Spreading democracy, freedom, and the American free enterprise system. And that was one of the most clever deceptions or lies that has been foisted in, I would say, the last century or more. Now, through that, Washington and the powers of Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, big oil, became what's called hegemonic. They became the dominant power in the world. The Soviet Union was a devastated entity. Stalin was not about to make war on Europe or anybody else. He desperately wanted to draw the line in the sand and have Eastern Europe as a buffer zone to defend, because they lost something like 29 million lives in actually defeating Nazi Germany. It wasn't the U.S. Marines that defeated Nazi Germany, ladies and gentlemen. It was 27 or 28 million Russians and Soviet citizens who bore the brunt of that conflict. And the U.S. came in with the American flag and planted it firmly in Western Europe and said, we won the war.
Smart timing.
Well, yes, very smart. And that was the hegemon, the dominant power is what the word means. And over the past, I would say, 30, 35 years, or even more, that hegemon has become increasingly disoriented. And the culmination was after September 11, 2001, that hegemon went berserk. It occupied this pathetic country called Afghanistan with a military occupation, claiming they were doing that to punish the Taliban in Afghanistan for not extraditing Osama bin Laden for the World Trade Tower, Pentagon attacks. Now, I, for one, do not believe that Osama bin Laden sitting in a cave in Tora Bora had anything to do with the disintegration of those buildings. This is a myth of grand proportion, but it's better suited for a Star Wars movie than it is for reality. Was there a dirty relationship between the CIA, the Bush family, and the Saudi bin Laden family? Yes, and there still is to this present day. That's a different question. So, increasingly, beginning in the 1950s, the CIA, which is a rogue organization that is out to destroy anything of integrity in the American Constitution, in the American positive experience as a force for peace and good in the world. The Central Intelligence Agency is an agency controlled by dark networks like Skull and Bones of Yale University, where the entire Bush family is members. Secretaries of Defense, I believe Pompeo, I recently read, the head of the CIA came out of Skull and Bones, but if not, that's secondary.
He produced many skulls and bones, for sure, whether he came out of it or not.
Yeah. But this is a death cult mentality. And the patriarchs, and I call them patriarchs, I don't call David Rockefeller an elite. He's not my idea of what an elite is. For me, an elite is someone who leads an example for others to follow, not as slaves, but to emulate. These aren't elites. These are pathological patriarchs who are dom-sub, domina and subordinate, master-slave. And I don't like that kind of relationship very much in anybody, and I've had it in very many parts of my life, so I speak from experience. So the lost hegemon, they kind of went berserk after 9/11, not because of 9/11, but they thought we can create a war on terror that will instrumentalize, weaponize Islam as a force to destabilize the entire world.
And it has really worked. You have to say it has worked extremely well.
It has failed everywhere. It has failed everywhere. The Arab Spring, all the color revolutions have failed everywhere, but they claim it has worked. It has worked in a certain sense, you're right.
It has worked to make chaos and conflict.
Yeah, to make chaos and to make people crazy.
And I just want to say, William, that when the whole thing started, we peace people came out talking and saying, if you attack Afghanistan and the quote-unquote terrorists, it's like blowing on the head of a dandelion. Everywhere that it lands, you have more terrorists. And we said, you will only create chaos and conflict. But it turned out that was what they wanted. And we knew when it was happening we kept saying, how can they do this? They're just creating chaos. But it got clearer and clearer that that's what they wanted.
Well, where was the chaos? It was in the former Soviet Union.
Right.
And the goal, I'm just finishing a new book now on what I call, provisional title is Fake Democracy. We talk about fake news. Well, the National Endowment for Democracy, the Soros Foundations, the Freedom House, blah, blah, blah. All these NGOs that have been created in the last 30 years are about fake democracy to create tyrant dictatorships that are obedient to the hegemon. And when I talk about the lost hegemon, is that the people with their hands on the switches in Washington and in Wall Street and so forth have lost their bearings. They're losing everywhere. And this is the good news. This is the good news, because I calculate since about the last 4.5 years, they have not gained anything. They have lost horrendously to the rest of the world. So in that sense, the Lost Hegemon title is very appropriate. But the book itself is about the obscene, unholy relationship between U.S. intelligence, mainly the CIA, and organizations such as the Muslim Brotherhood, which created the Mujahideen, with Saudi money, with Pakistani intelligence, Zia ul-Haq in the late 70s, 1980s, with Osama bin Laden and Saudi jihadists, these psychopathic Wahhabites. And the Muslim Brotherhood itself is a death cult. But with $100 billion of Saudi oil money, the Saudis spread that death cult all around in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Central Asia, in Turkey, you name it. It's like spreading the Black Plague with an airplane, a crop duster airplane.
Well, William Engdahl, I think one of the remarkable things about your book, one of the many remarkable things about this book, The Lost Hegemon, those whom the gods would destroy, and of course the rest of that they first make mad, this kind of insane push. Two things are clear, that the U.S., CIA, and the deep state and its military-industrial complex, first of all, they get rid of authoritarian leaders who were secular on the whole, and maintaining control over differing sects under their control. And then they replace them with fighting Wahhabists, which is the most conservative form of Islam. And what was really...
the most psychopathic form.
Talk about psychopathic. I thought about this. When you take away music, sex, love, art, all the things that tame the beast in humanity...
Any right that a woman has to be autonomous.
You turn people into psychopaths.
Yeah, they're psychopaths. They don't have feelings. They just have a religious view of this is how it is. You oppose me and I kill you.
But what was clear to me is that we, the CIA and this apparatus, move into countries that are nominally Islamic, who were following more pacific, non-political forms of Islam, which we see, William Engdahl, the people in our booth right now, Peggy Bean, our engineer with whom you were in contact, and Larry White, also engineering, we have many friends who are Muslims, and we love them dearly, and they are the kindest people you could imagine. And I spent 6 weeks in Palestine, and it was really humane in every way, despite being a country under horrible siege from the Israelis. Yeah. So that we come in and we shift that Islam from a Pacific form into this virulent. And of course, it's easy to be anti-Western when you open your eyes as a Muslim and see your whole ummah, the Muslim world, being destroyed mercilessly. Yeah.
Well, that was Hillary Clinton's Arab Spring. Excuse me for saying so, but
no,
this
it's
is
important.
Not Republicans. This is patriarch and their followers. Hillary Clinton, of course, being part of the Bush family machine, as her husband was, and Donald Trump the same. This is Donald Trump. I wrote an article recently on it's posted on my website in NEO called Donald Trump is Henry Kissinger's backdoor man.
and Henry Kissinger and Brzezinski, I didn't realize or recognize how much this connection goes, are Rockefeller's men.
To their bones. If they have any bones, I don't know.
This is the engineer. I'm going to have to break in here and say the views and opinions expressed on KVMR are those of the speaker only and not necessarily those of KVMR management staff or underwriters. I forgot to do that at the beginning.
We're very proud to make that announcement, and we are constantly told to make that announcement because this station lets us say what we believe to be the truth, or one of the truths. I don't like to say the truth because you never know. The truth, has depth. But
it
truly
is formulated.
We say many things that will shock most listeners to the conventional media.
Third rail.
Well, we thought of calling our show the Third Rail Show because when there's a third rail, we jump on it, and one of those is pointing out
the image. So one of those is what?
Well, you have a wide range too, and I don't want to interrupt the history, the sordid history of CIA promotion. We knew for quite some time, William Engdahl, that the U.S. supported ISIS and supported the rebels and the Mujahideen with arms, but the support was much more far-reaching than that.
Yeah.
Explain. Give us some of the depth.
Go back to Hillary Clinton's Arab Spring in 2010, 2011. It was a failed attempt at color revolutions everywhere in the Arab Middle East, everywhere, to install CIA groomed Muslim Brotherhood regimes that would be totally controlled by Washington and by big oil, by Wall Street and so forth. The idea is to control the oil and the natural gas of the most abundant region of oil and gas in the world that's known, at least geophysically today, and that is the 5 countries of the Middle East. So, because if you control the oil, as Kissinger said back in the 70s, you control entire nations. You control world economic growth. You can make sure that nobody comes up that's going to be a threat to your growth. If China gets too uppity and too autonomous, you simply ramp the price of oil up to $147 a barrel and force China into an economic crisis, things like that. Or you cut off their oil through the Straits of Malacca, many, many different things. So the Arab Spring was an attempt with all the so-called human rights democracy NGOs, most of them financed by the likes of George Soros, who seems to have a morbid affinity for CIA operations worldwide since at least the middle end of the 1980s when the National Endowment for Democracy was created as an agency. Its founder, Carl Gershwin, said in the Washington Post in an interview in 1990, The NED does what the CIA used to do 25 years ago, only privately. So these are the NGOs, the human rights, the nice guys, the pretty people, the ones who are lovey-dovey